I still remember the day my brother and I found that toy. A small plastic crocodile with faded green paint and yellowed teeth. We were just kids cleaning out our grandfather's attic after he passed. Neither of us could have known what we were bringing into our lives. What started as a simple childhood game would eventually become a nightmare that has haunted me for 20 years. And now, as I sit here in this empty house, I can hear it scratching across the floor in the next room, coming for me one final time.
Do you remember the rules of the game?
That voice. I haven't heard my brother's voice in 2 decades, yet here it is, clear as day in my mind. The rules. How could I forget the rules? They were simple enough for children to understand, yet somehow bound by something ancient and terrible. We called it Croc's Choice. The plastic crocodile would be placed between us on the floor. We'd each put a finger near its jaws, and whoever it bit would have to complete a dare. Childish stuff at first, eating something gross, staying in a dark room alone. But as time went on, the dares became more dangerous, more twisted, and the crocodile, it seemed to develop preferences. My brother always said the crocodile liked me better, that it chose me less often. I told him it was just random chance, just a cheap spring-loaded toy. But deep down, I knew there was something else happening, something we couldn't explain. The summer I turned 12 was when everything changed. My parents were going through a bitter divorce, and my brother and I were stuck at home while they fought through lawyers. We played Croc's Choice almost daily, the plastic toy becoming our judge, jury, and executioner for increasingly elaborate dares.
Let's make it more interesting today. Whoever gets bit has to go into the abandoned Miller house down the street.
I remember feeling my stomach drop. The Miller house had been empty for years. Rumors of deaths, of strange noises at night. No kid in the neighborhood would go near it. We sat cross-legged on my bedroom floor, the crocodile between us. Its small black eyes seemed to gleam in the afternoon light. I placed my index finger near its mouth. My brother did the same. We waited. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. The tension was unbearable. Then, snap! The jaws closed around my brother's finger. I remember the look on his face. Not fear, but something else. Resignation, maybe. Or perhaps he already knew what was coming.
Fine, I'll go tonight, but next time it's gonna choose you. It always balances out in the end.
That night, I watched from my bedroom window as my brother crossed the street and approached the Miller house. He turned back once, looked up at me, and then disappeared inside. I waited for what felt like hours, my breath fogging the glass. When he finally emerged, he was different, quieter. His eyes seemed darker somehow. He wouldn't tell me what he saw inside, only that the crocodile had spoken to him.
It told me things about us, about who gets to stay.
I laughed it off then, told him he was trying to scare me. But the next day, when we played again, there was a new intensity to the game. My brother stared at the crocodile with something like reverence.
Today, whoever it bites has to cut themselves, just a small cut, to feed it.
I should have stopped then, should have thrown the toy away, but there was something compelling about it, something that made me nod in agreement. We placed our fingers. We waited. The jaws snapped shut. On my finger this time, the first time it had chosen me in weeks. My brother smiled.
It's hungry, it needs to taste you too.
I made a small cut on my palm with a pocket knife, just enough to draw blood. I still have the scar, a thin white line that sometimes throbs when it rains, or when the crocodile is near. The games escalated after that. The dares became more dangerous, more twisted, and always, there was blood involved. Small amounts at first, but more as time went on. The crocodile's plastic seemed to change, too, becoming less faded, more vibrant. Its teeth looked sharper. One night, after our parents had gone to bed, my brother suggested the ultimate dare.
Tonight, we find out who it really wants. Whoever it chooses, well, the other one gets to live.
I thought he was joking, had to be joking. But there was something in his eyes that told me he wasn't. Something had changed in him since that night in the Miller house. I agreed, thinking I could talk him down once the game was over. We sat on the floor, the crocodile between us. It seemed larger somehow, its jaws wider. We placed our fingers. The wait was longer this time. The crocodile seemed to be considering, its plastic eyes somehow evaluating us both. Then, snap! It chose my brother! I felt relief wash over me, followed immediately by shame. This was just a game, a stupid game with a plastic toy. But my brother didn't seem upset. Instead, he smiled.
It's chosen me for something better. You don't understand yet, but you will.
That night I woke to strange sounds from my brother's room. A wet, tearing noise. Whispering. I was too afraid to investigate. In the morning, my brother was gone. My parents called the police. Search parties combed the woods. They dragged the lake. Nothing. The only thing out of place was the crocodile toy, sitting on my brother's perfectly made bed. And beside it, a small puddle of something dark that had soaked into the sheets. The police asked me questions. So many questions. Did my brother seem depressed? Did he have any enemies? Did he ever talk about running away? I answered as honestly as I could, but I never mentioned the crocodile. Never mentioned our game. Who would believe me? Life moved on, as it somehow does, even after tragedy. My parents finalized their divorce. I finished school, went to college, started a career, but I kept the crocodile. Couldn't bring myself to throw it away. It sat in a box in my closet, through moves and relationships and the slow passage of years. Until last week, when I found it sitting on my kitchen counter. I live alone. The box it had been in was still sealed in my closet, but there it was, its plastic eyes watching me as I made my morning coffee. That night, I heard my brother's voice. For the first time in 20 years.
It's time to finish the game. It's been waiting, choosing, all this time.
And I've been seeing him since then. Glimpses in mirrors, shadows that move wrong, and always, the crocodile appears in different places around my house. On the nightstand when I wake up, in the shower, on the dashboard of my car. Last night I finally understood what my brother meant all those years ago. The crocodile doesn't choose who loses, it chooses who it wants to take. Who gets the privilege of whatever comes next. I found a journal, hidden in the lining of the box where I'd kept the crocodile. My brother's handwriting, but the entries stop abruptly on the day he disappeared. The last page simply reads, "It's not death, it's transformation." There are photographs too, old yellowed pictures of our grandfather as a child, playing with the same crocodile toy, and before him, our great-grandfather. Always the same toy, always a disappearance in the family, always a choice made. Tonight, I've decided to end it, to destroy the crocodile once and for all. I have a hammer beside me, a lighter, gasoline. I'll burn this whole house down if I have to. But as I sit here, I can hear it moving, scratching across the floor. No longer plastic, I think. No longer just a toy. The scratching gets louder, closer. I can hear something else too. A wet, dragging sound. Breathing that doesn't sound human.
It always balances out in the end. Your turn now, brother.
The door is opening. I should run, should fight. But instead I find myself reaching out, placing my finger near those yellow teeth one final time. One last game. The jaws open, wider than should be possible. The eyes are no longer plastic but alive, ancient, hungry. I understand now. It was never about who would live. The crocodile doesn't decide who dies. It decides who gets to become something else. The jaws snap shut, and finally, after 20 years of waiting, I feel the transformation begin.